expand on something that was a snippet in a really old podcast episode. It's episode number 22. If you want to listen to this podcast, the full podcast, it's at taraswiger.com/podcast22. Hello in Amsterdam. And what that podcast episode was about is what I had learned in 4 years of running the Starship, which is my online community. It's open now, but there are just a couple spots left. If you're curious, you can go check that out at taraswiger.com/starshipbiz. taraswiger.com/starshipbiz. If you want to find out, I'm going to mention the Starship a couple times, just so you know. That's my online communities for makers and artists. About 30% of the people in the Starship are in the yarn industry. And that means they're either yarn makers, or they're yarn shop owners, or they're knitwear designers, or they're fiber farmers. And they sell their fiber from their animals. Oh, yay, yay! I saw that hand-dyed by Kate. Welcome. I'm going to guess your name is Kate. I'm super happy to have you. The Starship. It's taraswiger.com/starshipbiz. I usually have a link here, but, oh, look, there's this, which I forgot to put up. This is the link. So, what we're going to talk about today, there aren't 10 spots left. Ignore that. There are like 2 spots left. I just haven't updated it. Yay! Oh, yay, Dana! So, I wrote this podcast episode. It was back in September of 2014. You can find it at taraswiger.com/podcast22. And in it, I talked about what I've learned from 4 years running the Starship. Well, now it's been like 5.5 years. And I've learned what works for businesses and what doesn't just by watching the business as a board and seeing what works for them and what doesn't. And the businesses, like I said, like 30% are in the yarn industry. The rest are all artists and makers from a bunch of other kinds of industries. Like there's a glass blower, Ann Tudor. She also does Periscopes as Ann Tudor LLC. There's artists like Amy of Amy's Not Dead Yet. She made the Starship, which is on my wall there. There's all kinds of makers and artists. And by watching them, I figured out what's worked. So that podcast episode, I talk all about it. But at the very end, I say, oh, here, and as a side note, I've seen what's worked for knitwear and crochet and sewing designers. If you sell a pattern, this is what works. And I've had so many emails about that episode, and people have said that episode is either what convinced me you know what you're talking about, or that episode is what convinced me to join the Starship, or that episode really helped me clarify some things I didn't know about. So I thought we should talk about that here because you guys are knitwear designers. Thank you for inviting your followers, Kate. And you guys have experiences in what's working for your businesses, if it's working, and what's not. So I wanted to talk about it. I have some points, and then I'll also ask you guys questions. I'm not a knitwear designer. I never have been. I buy knitwear designs. I knit. And thank you guys for inviting your followers. So here's the deal. If you're new to Periscope and you're not sure what's happening, these hearts are from you tapping the screen. When you tap the screen and make the hearts happen, I know that you're enjoying it and I can expand on it a little bit more. And if you want to share it with your friends or followers, if you know people that are knit and crochet designers, you can click the guy if you're watching live and your share button will pop up. If you're watching the replay, you can swipe over or swipe down, depending on what kind of phone you have. Hit the share button, share it with your Twitter or Facebook followers if you hang out with other designers. And thank you guys who have done that. So if you're just joining us, hi, my name is Taraswiger. I help makers and artists feel awesome about their business by working on their profitability, their marketing, and getting stuff done in their business, including goal setting and actually doing the stuff day to day. And I want to share some lessons that I've learned from over 5 years of working with knitwear designers. And when I say working with, I've been teaching them in classes, providing support and encouragement, and doing some one-on-one sessions to help them get clear about their marketing and their positioning and also their profitability. So let's dive right into what I have found is working for knitwear designers. So the first thing to know is that no matter what it looks like from the outside, designers often, for the first couple years, are struggling to have a profitable business. And what I mean by that is there's income and there's expenses, and what's left when you take income minus expenses is profit. Now, a profitable business is if you make $5 over your expenses, which actually is almost pretty simple to do in the beginning, but that $5 a month or a year probably isn't enough for you to think about if your business is profitable or not. So what I've realized by working with and seeing the numbers of some really amazing and like designers that people respect and that are on the teaching circuit is that they're not always making the amount of money that the outside world thinks they are. So the first thing is you cannot make any assumptions about somebody's profitability based on their rock star status or based on their lack of rock star status, because I know several crochet designers, one right off the top of my head, has been in business for over 20 years. She makes like what I would consider to be a good salary working her full-time job as a crochet designer and teacher. And I don't know that you would know who she is. If you're super in the industry or you're super into crochet, you might, but she's not like rock star status, right? She's not like on all of the places and super sparkly and like fantastic and people are like lining up to hang out with her. So, and I have an article about this I actually just recently tweeted. There are a lot of myths around having a big audience or seeming like a rock star, and one of them is that people assume you make more money than you do. And on the flip side of that, a lot of people who don't seem like rock stars are making a living doing it. So perception is not reality. So that's the first really important thing for you to know. The second thing, and like Frenchie has agreed with this in the comments, is in the first year or two, it's still going for most people. The people who build businesses out of it, thank you so much, Esther. The people who build businesses from their knitwear design keep going, and they keep going, and they keep going. We're going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but the more new patterns you release, the more you see your back catalog sell. And that is how you piece together a knitwear design business that's profitable, is that you launch a new pattern and your back catalog sells. So if your back catalog, yes, Frenchie says, keep going, growing, and evolve. Exactly. So if your back catalog is like 3 patterns deep, then you might have 20 or 50 sales of your new pattern and let's say 5 of all your old ones, and that's going to be less profitable than if you have 20 patterns in your back catalog and on a new launch you sell the exact same amount, 20 of this and 5 of each of these, right? If you have 20 in your back catalog, that's $100, or 100 sales rather. So that, it's a long haul business is what I'm saying. It's not until you have a back catalog built up and a back catalog of patterns people want to knit and buy. So you might have old patterns that like nobody's ever bought. That doesn't really count. So I wanted to say that. Oh, okay. So along with having a back catalog, the key to all of the designers whose numbers I've seen that have grown over the course of time, yes, it takes a while to get that back catalog. That's exactly right. That's why it's a long haul business. You gotta keep going in order to grow the back catalog. So the key is launching new patterns regularly and consistently. And holy cow, does that take a lot of time. Putting out a new pattern every month or every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks or something like that takes a ton of time. I get that. And pattern design and development and release that's a whole workflow process in and of itself. Yes, so that is your designing portion, then your test knitting portion, whether you knit when you design or you knit after you design, or if you hire test knitters, then the tech editing side, then the graphic design side. Yes, it's tons of work, and that whole process might take more than a month. And if you're going to release a pattern every month, which I'm just using that as an example, then you have to have been working at it for a while before you can get up to that releasing. Now, this is the same thing for other businesses like painters, people who make very few new things each month. I don't know what a quarter I think is in reply to. I'm going to take a drink. So you guys tell me, because this is coming up in the chat, how often do you release new patterns, or what is your goal? How often is it to release new patterns? And I assume some of you aren't knitwear designers. That's totally true, or totally fine. You can apply this to other businesses, but since knitwear pattern designers and sewing pattern designers sell a PDF, which doesn't have much overhead or much cost of goods sold, 1 or 2 a month, once a year. Goal is once a month. I want to release a pattern every other month. Okay, cool. So what I was saying is that knit and pattern design at all. I'm not saying knit design. I'm going to say pattern design is a different kind of business than making yarn or even making prints, because your cost of goods sold for each item is really, really low, but you have to sell a lot to break even on that one pattern. So, yes, so you try to coordinate with third-party releases. So that's important, and we're going to talk about that too in a minute. I have to drink some coffee if I'm going to Periscope this late. So, the things, so most of you guys are saying in between 1 and 2 a month, as rarely as 1 a quarter. Sometimes I re-release old patterns to fill a gap in release dates. Yes. My latest pattern was the first bear its costs. Oh, to break even on its costs, I bet you're saying. That whole doing a collection less frequently, we can talk about that. It really depends on which marketing strategy is. So both things can work, releasing single patterns or releasing collections. Most of the people, though, that are new and want to put together a collection, it takes them way too long to put it together. They would have been far better off to start releasing patterns, even if their audience isn't as big and they're not selling as many, simply to get in the habit and to get people in the habit of buying your patterns and knowing you're going to release new patterns. Yes, and releasing patterns once you get the rights back. This is something that so many pattern designers talk to me about, or say, like in the Starship as in their weekly check-in, that they're going to work on re-releasing their patterns they got the rights back. And so many people forget to do that. Rights reversions, increase my releases, and give me some breathing room. Exactly. Yes, totally. So you want to stay on top of that, but I know that's like a tricky thing. I would have never even known that's a thing if it weren't for working with designers, so that once a magazine has released your pattern, they have the rights for a certain amount of time, that it reverts back to you and you can release that pattern. A lot of people see a lot of traction doing that. And at the very least, it's a pattern that you could be making money from. You should definitely release it. My hair's being weird. Okay, so what works? My dogs are gonna bark at the neighbors for a minute. Yes, that and posting in more places. That's interesting. We can talk about that. So consistently releasing new patterns is the key to building a business around pattern design. Regularly having... Can you guys hear my dogs? Why don't you tell me that while I take a sip of coffee? Okay, so what you want to keep in mind, so sorry for the barking. Yeah, they're like in a different room. Yeah, they're totally into my neighbors getting home, that's all. And my neighbors about to go in the house, so they'll stop. Okay, so the thing is about releasing consistently new designs is A, you then have more things to put in your back catalog, right? Your back catalog is going to fill up, which we said is key. Also, each new release gives you the chance to launch something. And launching things, going through the process of creating a launch around it, getting excitement, showing it sneak peeks, then actually launching it, getting your test knitters, which we'll talk about, to share their pictures of it, blogging all about the pattern, then maybe doing a knit along or a giveaway or a something. Does anyone else here have much success re-releasing previous magazine designs? That's an interesting question. So do you see good sales when you re-release a magazine design? I kind of wonder if that goes back to launching, and if you truly launch them, or you just kind of like let them out in the world. So we're talking about launching. The reason why launching, and you guys can just answer each other in the chat, that's totally fine. The reason why releasing new patterns is so good for your sales and will boost your business over the long term is because if you make a big deal about each pattern, each launch is a chance for people to interact with you, and it's a way of growing your audience. So what most people find across industries is the way that they get new people onto their list and into their community is by launching a product. That almost seems crazy, but for example, my Starship program is now open, and I've done all the things for launching it. I've done more Periscopes, I've done deeper Periscopes, I've posted stuff on Instagram, I sent emails to my list, and in doing that, I got way more new people on my list than bought the thing, in part because the thing has a cutoff. There are only so many spots open each quarter. But each time I do that, my list increases. So every time I launch something, even though a big percentage of those people don't buy, they just find me, which means the next time I launch something, I'm launching it to more people. There are now more people in my audience. And so that's why launching a new pattern every month doesn't just give you those new sales, it also increases your list each time. And by list, I mean your people who are interested in hearing what you have to say. Hopefully you actually get them on an email list. Watch any of my previous Periscopes to hear how strongly I feel about you having an email list. Yes, so Frenchie says, I use beta patterns to build my email list. That's interesting. You'll have to tell us more about that. But so launching actually builds your list. Even if you don't see a spike in this month's sales, you'll see a spike in next or the next month's sales. Let's see, free beta patterns. Then I upsell them when the issue released. Yes, okay, so you give away your pattern when it's in the beta stage, and then they can buy the finished pattern. Wow, that's amazing! 1,000 new subscribers in one day. That's insane! That's a huge percentage of my total list. So yes, so giving away stuff, getting test knitters to talk about it, that's just like totally amazing. Good job, Frenchie. She's actually doing a 5 shawls in 5 days where you learn different shawl shapes. Totally fascinating. Follow her. And for those of you who are watching the YouTube video, I was just talking about Aroha knits. Okay, so let's go back to what I was saying. Consistently releasing new patterns works to increase your sales and increase your business for all of those reasons. The launching process increases your audience. The back catalog, having a back catalog, increases the sales that you get with each new launch. So what most knitwear designers find is that each new launch, they get more sales because of that back catalog, right? So they get more total sales, and that's slowly how your income grows. Now, in the beginning, if you're going from 1 sale a month to 2 sales a month, that might not feel like very much. But when you're going from 10 to 15, and then 15 to 25, and then 25 to 100, it feels great, right? Like, so that small amount of increase, and that's how you have to think about these numbers. So if you're at 1 consistent sale every month, or maybe 5 consistent sales every month, you know you have to keep doing the work to keep scaling it up, and the work is consistently launching new patterns that are wonderfully made, tech edited, and photographed, and launch the crap out of those things. What I mean is put all of your marketing effort behind it. Talk about it in all the platforms that you are using, and talk about new things. Figure out what is interesting to knitters or sewers or crocheters about this pattern, and how can I talk about that? What different aspects can I cover? Do I need to teach a technique? Maybe create a video, create a photo series that teaches a technique, maybe show it in 5 different colors, maybe talk about its inspiration. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about launching. I actually have podcast episodes about launching. So my podcast is Explore Your Enthusiasm. You can hear lots of ideas there. So that's a big one. Consistently release new things. Also, most designers that actually have a business that pays them money are mixing traditional publications with self-publishing. And traditional publications might even be like other indie publishers, like smaller publishers, but they're mixing the two. So I've had several clients that worked almost exclusively with traditional publishers, and they found it very, very hard to have a steady income, even though that's the thing so many people shoot for. However, just self-publishing, for some people, it works great because they treat it like a business and they go about it very systematically. I think Frenchie of Aroha Knits is one of those people that goes about it very systematically and like a business. Other people need a little outside like certification that they're good and they're worthy and should be designing. And so getting some traditionally published, and by that I mean it's in a magazine, it's in a book, etc., getting some of that under your belt can not only build your confidence, it also, like, someone else paid you a chunk of money and you got to design for them. But in my experience, very few knitting and crochet designers can make a living based on that. Yeah, it gives you credibility. It also might help you find more people and find your audience, especially if you do something really interesting for a publication, like something really focused on what your niche is, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But in general, you can't, I don't, and maybe someone will come in and tell me that they entirely make their living on traditional publications, but most people are making it with a combination of the two, heavily focused on truly sharing their self-published patterns, not just knitting them and putting them up on Ravelry for sale. So you can mix the two. The other way that I've watched a designer like totally skyrocket her business is by collaborating with yarn makers. So we live in a world full of people who dye really interesting yarns. And, oh, you said, so it's all magazine work. That's super interesting. So you've never self-published anything. I'd be interested to know how your business is doing on that model. That's fantastic. That's what you do? What are you saying, Frenchie? What's what you do? All self-publish or the mix? Oh, collaborating, lots of collaborations. Okay, so lots, yes, like Fairy Girl. I bet she's a yarn maker. Click on her, everybody. Okay, so I want you to think about what yarn you can use for your next project and how you can collaborate with that yarn maker to get them to talk about your design to their audience. Because think about it, if you could just reach your audience with each launch, that's going to grow a certain amount of things. But if you, oh, that's so fantastic. I'm happy to hear that, Anna. If you reach both your audience and someone else's audience, yay, that's a whole new audience that didn't know you existed before. So when you collaborate with a yarnie, you want to have a super clear understanding of what's going to happen, how soon you're going to use their yarn. Trust me, because I work with a lot of yarn makers, that's really what they want to know. Are you going to do this in 6 months or a year or like never before they send you some skeins? I love to hear that. So you want to collaborate, have a clear description of what you're going to do, and part of that description is how they're going to share your collaboration and how you're going to share their collaboration. Now, there are a lot of like financial ways you can make this work out for them so they feel incentivized to share it. Maybe make it exclusive for their yarn in a kit for a certain amount of time if they have a business that can sell kits. Otherwise, you can give them royalties or for a short period of time, or you can say, I'll feature you on my blog or my podcast, and then you feature me on your blog or your podcast or your newsletter. But you want to be clear about whatever that is. Do not collaborate and assume that that yarn maker is going to talk about your pattern, especially if you do not fill them in. So once you decide how you're going to collaborate, I want you to take responsibility for taking it in your own hands to give them all the info they need for them to do all of the marketing they can do for this new pattern. Because remember, for them, they're not marketing you, the designer. They're marketing, hey, you can get 10 skeins of this and make this, right? It's marketing for them too. But you need to be really, really clear on what you want them to do and then give them everything they need to do it. So that means on publication day, sending them a live link, sending them your images, sending them before publication days, your ideas for how you guys can collaborate. Anytime they ask for something from you, like a headshot or they want you to answer questions, fill it in and get it to them. Okay, so I love that you guys are talking to. So the yarn shop owner, Yarn It and Dash, Esther, says, we're looking for designers to collaborate for limited edition kits. That's awesome. So contact Esther at Yarn It and Dash. She's in Columbus. She was recently on the podcast on Explore Your Enthusiasm. So Starship captains collaborate constantly. Pattern designers and yarn shop owners and yarn makers. When I say yarn makers, I mean dyers, spinners, even fiber farmers, right? They're making yarn from scratch. They collaborate all the time and see really, really great results because even if the person you're collaborating with has a middle or small sized business, then they still have some audience that you don't have. So getting in front of those people is good for you. Okay? Good. So collaborating with yarnies. And yarn stores. So also you need to, the people that I see that do amazing with their designs, and as a knitter, like I'm looking around at Ravelry and noticing the people whose designs keep coming up for me, keep coming up in my searches, keep coming up because I'm drawn to them. And here's what I found. Getting test knitters who both are good at knitting and take gorgeous photographs and are active on Ravelry will do amazing things for your people. Now, I'm not talking about, so I said test knitters. What I really mean are beta knitters. Okay, so getting people to knit your pattern before anybody else can. So test knitting is where people are actually like trying to find mistakes, which is great. But you can also get a group of beta knitters who will not only knit it, but will photograph it and will put it in their projects. And lots of the designers in the chat are saying how much test knitters rock. The key is not just to get their feedback on the thing, but to get them to share their projects on their Ravelry page, because when I go to knit a new pattern, I look at its project pages, its projects, and I'm so glad it's useful. And if people have not knit your project yet, I am not likely to knit it. It can be difficult to get the beta knitters to take a decent photo if somebody's asking. Let me tell you this, you know how to do that? Only have beta knitters who have already proven to you they take great photos. work with beta knitters who have an empty Ravelry projects page, or who have crappy photos, or who only have one photo of each project. You want to find and work with people who are already taking great photos. You might get 50 people who offer to do it and only 3 take good photos. Work with those 3. Now, you can work with those 50 if you want to, if you want feedback, if you want interest, if you're trying to build your relationship with them, but don't expect somebody who has never taken good photos to suddenly take good photos for you. Okay, so, I mean, that's the brilliance of the internet, is now you know if they take good photos or not. You know, because of their Instagram account and their Ravelry account, if they're going to take good photos of your project or not. What they've done in the past is an indication of what they'll do for you. So do it. Use it. Like, take their word for it. Okay. Yes, right. So, Knitting Image, and I'm spacing on your name, doesn't rely on test knitters for picking up mistakes because that's a tech editor's job. Exactly. Exactly. You want to have your item tech edited to make sure that all of the math works out, that it all makes sense, that like a professional who does this with patterns knows that your pattern will work. And then it's Jane, of course it's Jane. And then having people test it out or be beta knitters, be the first people who are knitting it and then put it on their site. So that's why what Frenchie said she does earlier, which is give the beta pattern out as a cookie for signing up for her email list, why that makes so much sense, because she's going to get all those people working on it and getting it in their projects, and then when she releases it, it's already going to have some projects there. So that little chunk has like changed some designers' launches because they've gotten the right people to knit it. And here's the thing, as they're knitting it, invite them to talk about it in your Ravelry group. And then there will be a conversation, and oh, that's really smart. So somebody said they use test knitters that live close by, and then they can take the good photos. So if you want to, sorry, I got distracted by the chat. You guys are all having really great ideas. If you want to, never mind, totally went blank. If you want to get people excited about your project, have your test knitters talk about it in your Ravelry group. So you're looking for people to be test knitters who are active, who communicate in your group already, who take great photos. And it might be in the very beginning you don't have these people. That's okay. You'll find them and you'll build them over time. Put a call out for test knitters. Do what Frenchie does and offer the beta pattern when they subscribe to your list, and then invite those people, follow up with everybody who downloaded the PDF, and say, if you're working on this pattern, please post it in your projects page. Even though the pattern's not live yet, I'd love to see your progress. Then when you go live on launch day, contact all those beta people who got the beta pattern and say, hey, it's live now. If you haven't shared a picture of it, please do, because you're one of the first knitters of this. Your project is going to get a lot of traffic. There you go. Now you've just incentivized me to share it. You've also made me feel super special. And you can then, in your launch, feature the projects that those first people knit, right? And that is going to help you have content to share throughout your launch. Yes, so get test knitters who do gorgeous work, who take good photos, who are active on Ravelry, and then remind them regularly to put it on Ravelry. Like throughout the process, remind them to post photos of it, because that is really great. That's great marketing for you, because like I said, I don't knit a pattern that doesn't have any projects in it, and once it has some projects, and especially if it's like a thing I'm going to wear, once I see it on different body types, I'm much more likely to knit it. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. That's going to help sell your pattern to have good projects in there already. I tell yarn makers the same thing. Have some projects made out of your yarn so that people can see how they can make your yarn. Even if you sell a fingering weight superwash merino and it's the same fingering weight everybody else is dyeing, like other knitters don't know that, so show them that. Is it better to have the design secret or show early photos? So somebody asked in the chat. I would always show early photos. The only reason why people keep things secret is if it's going to be something totally mind-blowingly new. But yeah, giving sneak peeks gets people excited and they want in on it, and you need something to share regularly. Yeah, so it builds the anticipation. And here's the thing, you can tell people what to do right now if they're into it. Go sign up to my list. You'll be the first people notified. Do you like how this looks? Sign up to my list and you'll get the early version of the pattern. Sign up and you'll get a 1-day coupon code that you can use. Okay, yes, now most traditional publishers will tell you to keep it secret, but I'm talking about for self-publishers. I don't see any benefit to doing that. So the last thing on my list is to develop deep relationships with knitters. What I mean by this is be active with the people knitting your projects. Comment in the beginning, comment on every single person who posts a picture of a project in your pattern or your yarn even. Because you acknowledging them is going to build a kind of relationship that none of your marketing is going to do. Also, create a hashtag and then comment and like all of the photos on Instagram that have that hashtag. So I would do that above, like, have an overall hashtag, right? So I have Swagger Live for these Periscopes. I have Explore Your Enthusiasm. My different programs have different hashtags. So I can go and talk to the people who are listening to Explore Your Enthusiasm. And yes, hashtagging builds community. It also lets your people are gonna, when they use that hashtag, they're gonna click on it, see everybody else who's using it. And that is also social proof. And then you go in and you talk to everyone who uses it. All of the time. That's probably how I met lots of you guys. You might have listened to my podcast, use the hashtag Explore Your Enthusiasm. I like and comment on your photo, and then like we're suddenly more connected. You know what I mean? We like know each other slightly more because now I'm looking at your photos and you're looking at mine, and we might have been just connected on the podcast, but now we're connected on Instagram. And if you go to my Instagram profile, you can sign up for my list. And so in all of that ways, it continuously builds the relationship. Now, so deep relationships with knitters. Yes, so Frenchie says people are using her challenges hashtag to interact with each other, and then she can give them encouragement. So what you do when you do that is you're building community amongst each other, and a community built around your work is going to like suck people in and then keep them there because people stay in communities for the relationships. So that is, so how do you come up with a good hashtag? Somebody asked. Use the hashtag that makes the most sense for your business. Swagger Live is one actually Creative Live used the first time I taught for them in 2014. And then I was like, hey, that makes sense when I started on Periscope. It's Tara Swagger Live. I'm really sad that they had already used it for Tara Live for Tara Gentili, T-A-R-A Live, because that's even easier than Swagger Live. But use one that makes sense for your business. So hashtag quirky knits, hashtag quirky hand knits would work for you, quirky hand knits. And then you want to encourage people to use it. So that means that when they buy a pattern, your welcome email says, thanks so much, share this project using the hashtag quirky hand knits so I can be sure to see it. And then when you do anything that you do in your marketing, on your Instagram, on your blog, on your newsletters, say, hey, use the hashtag quirky hand knits to, so that we can all see your projects. And then in the beginning, you'll probably want to incentivize it. So do a giveaway for subscribe to my newsletter, use the hashtag quirky hand knits, and I'll draw one name from my newsletter subscribers that have recently used that hashtag, and you'll get a free pattern. So then people are going to do it to be entered in that giveaway. So deep relationships with knitters, hashtagging, commenting on all of their project photos. I mean, until you're like super big, you can do that. You have the time and the resources to go in there and look at all the project photos and talk to the people. Also, hold knit-alongs, be chatty in your group and other groups, like the Yarnies that you collaborate with, go into their groups and hang out and talk with them. And obviously, put your project in Ravelry. That's something that some people don't do. Do that. Okay, now I had a client session with Gwen Bortner today. We worked together, and I asked her at the end of our session after she was all done getting my help, I said, hey, while I have you on the phone, can I ask you a couple questions? So Gwen has been in the knitting industry for 15 years. She has books published, she teaches classes, and I said, so I'm going to do a Periscope about things that designers need to know to build a business. So what in your mind, you've met so many successful designers and people who actually make money from it versus people who just seem like they're making money from it. What couple things would you say is most important? And here's what Gwen said, which is great. Number one, you can't just be a designer. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, every designer who builds a income and a life out of designing, they are not just designers. They're teaching, they're traveling and teaching, they're holding workshops, they're holding retreats, or they're doing something like photography for other things or other designers, or they're doing things like tech editing for other designers, or they are like building a little publishing empire and they publish not only their own patterns, but also they start to publish and curate other people's patterns. So you can't just be a designer. Knowing that, like, and what I mean by you can't just be a designer doesn't mean you can't be a designer. It also means you need to have multiple income streams in order to both grow your audience and offer them different things, right? So you can't just be a designer. You got to release other things. Teach classes, teach online classes, teach e-courses, do photography for your own work, for other people's work, publishing stuff, tech editing stuff, test knitting, like do other things in the industry. That is how you're going to build a career out of it. And if you think about it, all the knitwear designers that you think of right away as being successful, they all teach. And there's a tech editor, Dana, in our chat. And if you want to get into tech editing, I have to just say, Jolie of Jolie Creates, she's a member of the Starship, and she has a great course that a lot of people have taken about becoming a tech editor. So she's joliecreates.com, and she's a member of the Starship, which again, is open right now for a couple more spots. It's taraswagger.com/starshipbiz if you want to learn more about that and join us. And people are saying Jolie's tech editing courses are awesome. Yes, that is what I've heard. I mean, I'm not a tech editor, so I haven't taken it, but Jolie in general is awesome, so I would believe it. Now, so Gwen said you can't just be a designer. Second thing, you need to pick a focus and a niche. And I was like, oh my goodness, how did I not think of this? So if you notice, people who have successful design businesses often are known for one thing. And they are really focused in on one kind of thing. So whether, thank you for posting the link. The link is taraswagger.com/starshipbiz. Pick a focus, pick a niche. When people tell me, oh, I just design all kinds of things. I do color work, I do lace, I do shawls, I do sweaters. You don't do anything. Because people need to think of you as being the go-to X person. This goes back to you doing things other than being a designer. If you're going to teach, what would you teach? Well, the more into a certain technique or style or visual style you're in, the easier it'll be for you to figure out what to teach. So, you might do shawls, you might do all lace shawls, you might do shawl construction, you might do color work. So in the chat, Frenchie does shawl construction and Varian does color work, stranded color work. And Varian learned from the best old school color teachers there are, like Alice Starr. And knowing what to focus in on is going to help people think of you as the X person, right? The person who does this thing. I have another client who makes really, really, really detailed instructions. Each pattern is actually like a little class booklet. So that's her thing. It's super educational. So now she's even shifting more and more to do educational content because that's her patterns are more expensive than other people's because they're so educational. Yes, so you want to pick a focus and a niche. And I would also say, you can guys see the sun is setting and it's starting to rain. It's getting darker in here. You want to pick a visual, not pick, expand whatever your visual style is naturally, amplify it, make it so people can't miss it, right? So I like hot pink and stars. Like I just wear a lot of hot pink. My purse is hot pink. My Filofax hot pink. It was like that before I ever had it as my branding. The only tattoo I have is of stars. All my life when people would say, how do you pronounce your name? I'd say Tara like Starr. And so the person who made my branding is all hot pink and stars, right? That totally makes sense. Plus my product was already called the Starship. So it's all space travel stars, etc. But that's just already who I am amplified. So I'm not talking about your graphic design, I'm talking about your actual designs that you make, your sewing or knitting or crochet designs. You want to take that and expand it so it's really obvious. So if you like there's some Instagrammers I follow that their visual style is way different than mine. It's all calm and it's neutrals and it's earth tones. Keep going in that direction. Don't like change it up then and throw in neon because neon's hot if neon isn't your thing. If you do very traditional color work in traditional colorways of like Jameson and Smith, which are all these Tweety Heathered colors, keep going that way. If you do color work, traditional color work, but in crazy new colors, keep going that way. Like, go more towards the thing that you're doing that's very, very you. And, so somebody asked, how can I shout beading at my people? What I mean is do more beading. Make all your stuff beading. And decide what's your visual style within that. Is it all neutrals and earth tones? Is it glitz and glamour? Is it neons? What is your visual style within the technique of beading? Do more of that. The clearer your visual style is, the easier it'll be for people to A, spot your pattern and be like, oh, that's a variant design, that's Frenchy design. And the easier it'll be for people to know to come back to you. Because here's the thing, think about it. I dress all in brights, right? So I'm more likely to buy a pattern that's knit up in a bright colorway, and the knitters who do that, who aren't into like calm, peaceful stuff, are more likely to get me to buy their pattern just because that's how it is. So I'm going to keep going back to the people who are doing that. So even if I don't remember who the designer was, when I see their photo, it's going to click with me that, oh, that's totally for me. So that is what I want you guys to keep in mind. Get a visual style and go for it. Take it all the way. When you think about the people who are really big in design right now, and keep in mind, I'm just like on the knitter side of things, but I immediately think of Stephen West, who has such a clear visual style. I don't know what to call it. European punk, bright? I don't know, but it's very, 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 very clear, right? It's like you see his photo, you know it's a Stephen West photo. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, right? It's unmistakable. The same thing is true for other people whose less stuff is more loud. People who have a quieter aesthetic. When you see, I want to say it's a Playful Day on Instagram. When I see her photo, I know I'm looking at a Playful Day photo. I don't know if it's like a combination of like textures and natural and like chill, right? Like that's what I always associate with her. So if that was like my jam, then when I see her Instagram photos, when I see her projects pop up as I'm scrolling around on Ravelry, I'm gonna be like, oh, I love that. That really works for me, right? So that's you want to do that and expand on it. It makes it easier for the right people to know it's right for them, which is what your job is. Do not worry about turning people off. Worry about turning the right people so far on that they buy everything you make. Okay? And that doesn't mean that you need to do what other people are doing. So if European rainbow brights are super popular right now because one person is doing it well, that doesn't mean you need to do that if your style is like natural and textural and neutral. Right? Okay, so somebody said in the chat, it's called designer voice. Exactly. Be clear about your designer voice. Don't worry about, though, so many people are like, I don't know what my designer voice is. I'm not sure. Like, just look at what you do, and then you do you. You do more of the thing you've already been doing, amplify it. Okay, it took me a while to realize that my style is, and this, I'm not a designer by any stretch, but my designer, my style, I now call, oh, my mind just went blank. Kindergarten punk. It's like if your 5-year-old listened to Bikini Kill and La Tigra, like that, the more I do of that when I teach, the more people are like, you are just like you are online. So it's your personal aesthetic, and then it's also the thing you keep designing over and over, the thing you keep being drawn to, the things you're drawn to when somebody else designs it. That's a key, that's a clue on what your visual style is. So I decided that my personal style was kindergarten punk when I was in line at a Starbucks, looked over, saw like a 4-year-old in hot pink and Doc Marten boots and like a pink tutu that was sparkly, and she had her pink sunglasses on her head, and she had like, and I was like, I would wear that whole outfit. I took a slide picture of her and shared it with my husband and was like, I would wear that whole outfit right there. That is what I would wear. So somebody's asking, what if you're a bit eclectic in your style? Then like your style is eclectic. You want to think about how is it eclectic? Like kindergarten punk, kind of eclectic, right? But you want to pull that together. So I realized, so when you look at somebody else and you're like, whoa, I would wear that entire thing, that's a clue. And it doesn't have to be just finding your own personal style of what you wear, but if you are a designer, then clothes are a part of it because you're making clothes, right? Unless you're making bags, in which case you want to look at what kind of bags you love. So those were Gwen's 2 points. Nobody is just a designer, and pick a focus and a niche and a visual style, because, okay, so you're going to reach a smaller percentage of the general population if you have a very clear voice, and yet the people you reach will love you. So all of you who have been watching this long with me, my voice speaks to you in a way that doesn't make you crazy. There's a big percent, like most people in the world who want business advice don't want it delivered in this package, both visually and voicey, right? And yet, for the people that it works for, it really, really, really works for them. So that's what I want you to keep in mind. Whenever you're feeling like, oh, I don't want to turn people off, think, I built a successful business on being a total weirdo. So you can too. Everybody that I know and love and has a business they're really happy with is built it on being a total weirdo. Now, your version of weirdo might be way more socially acceptable than mine, but yes, be authentic and be yourself. And this sounds like kind of the things that people say in Hallmark cards, but that's really, really, really what successful businesses are based on. Everyone that you can think of is based on that person being wholly the thing only that person can be. And no matter how boring you think you are, I promise you're not. And just work on amplifying the parts of you that are really, really you. So Jane said, in case anyone missed it, Creative Live right now has a 25% discount. So if you want to get my classes on Creative Live, that's what she was saying in the chat. You can do that. Go to Creative Live, search for Media Instructor. It's 25% off. I have a class. I have a 3-day class, 3 different classes on marketing and 1 on managing your day to day, figuring out a work schedule that will work for you. Okay, so after all that, after everything I said that goes into being a designer, some percentage of people are going to decide it's not for them. Some big percentage of people are going to just be hobbyists. Like, I designed a couple patterns, like Forever Go, not as a business, just for fun. And yes, that's a good question. We'll talk about that in the... Okay, so somebody asked, is the Creative Live classes different than what's in the Starship? There are pieces of all of those Creative Live classes in other classes that are in the Starship. So if you're a Starship member, you have access to all that. The class Wrangle Your Time is really in alignment with Get More Done. It's delivered in a different way, of course, because a Creative Live class is 6 hours of video, which I don't ever make any of my classes 6 hours of video. But you can ask in the Starship too, and I can point you to, if you're thinking about buying a Creative Live class and you're in the Starship, post in the forum or email Jess Vulcan@tarswagger.com and we'll tell you which classes are in parallel to each other. Because the marketing class is a bunch of different classes mixed together. So if you're not in the Starship, because the Starship's just not for you, Creative Live is a good way to get a lot of that content, the actual class content, in a package that's delivered beautifully because they're great video editors. Now, so what I was saying, some designers decide that this is just not for them. All of the things I said is just like not worth it. They don't actually want to have a business that bad, and that's fine. Like, if a business isn't for you, then a business isn't for you. Not everybody needs to make a business out of it. But I want you to be ultra clear on what it is you want from it. So I hear a lot of people complain, there's no way to make money with this. And then people who really are trying to make money with this hear that and feel disappointed. And they think, oh, there's no way to make money with this. And it kind of spreads, like the disease spreads. Instead of people saying, look, you can make a business out of this, but you have to treat it like you're making any other business, and you have to work at it. And it takes time, and it takes focus on the thing that you're great at, and it takes you learning to do different kinds of things. If that's really what you want to do with your life, then you make it work. If that just sounds like too much work, then it's just not for you, and that's fine. But don't keep watching businessy stuff, and don't keep beating yourself up for not having a business if you decide you don't want one. But I think the key there is to decide. Make a decision, and you don't have to make a decision today, but make a decision. Do I want to turn this into a design business, or do I want to just keep designing for fun and not beat myself up if it doesn't make money? So decide. You guys know I'm all about that. Because having a business can be a lot of fun. It can be super fulfilling even before it's making very much money if you're doing the thing you've really decided you want to do. What a lot of people do is they're not quite sure about it and they beat themselves up. I have a video called "Is it a business or is it a hobby?" If you just search Tara Swagger and "Is it hobby or business?" you'll see, and I give you like 4 ways to tell if it's a hobby or a business. It comes down to like, do you want to do the work or not? So I want you guys to think on that. Thanks for being here. So is there anything I missed that you think is a vital part of being a designer? I'm going to let you tell me in the comments while I finish sipping my coffee. It's like, is it getting really dark in here? Is it too dark for you guys? Anything you think I missed that you need to know to be a designer in business? Or did I hit all of the things? I want to remind you, this was an expanded portion of what was in the podcast, taraswiger.com/podcast22. And yes, Jane says, always be a professional. That's definitely true. Is a blog necessary? I'm going to give you a short answer on this because this isn't a full Q&A. No. No, you can absolutely build a business without a blog, but you need to think about how are you regularly going to talk to people. I would say an email list is absolutely necessary. And you can go back to the beginning and watch it. We are probably going to edit this and put it on YouTube if I didn't get too distracted and talk to people. So let's do this. Hi, YouTube viewer. Thanks for watching the video. This was a Periscope broadcast, so I was commenting on comments that were coming up in Periscope. If you'd like to follow me on Periscope, I'm Tara Swiger there. You can catch the broadcast live and you can actually see the chats that are going on as I'm talking. So if I pointed to the screen, I was pointing to someone's chat message. But thank you so much for watching. Be sure that you subscribe and you can check out all my YouTube videos at taraswiger.com/YouTube.